So it's Parshas Bo. The Torah begins with the pasuk Vayomer Hashem el Moshe Bo el Paroi. Hashem says to Moshe, "Come to Paroi, ki ani hichvadeti es liboy." I hardened his heart, es leiv avodav. But the pasuk does not explain what is he coming to Paroi for. What will he do when he comes to Paroi? What will he say? Doesn't say anything. Later, when he actually carries out this tzivui of Bo el Paroi, the pasuk says, "Vayovoi Moshe va'Aaron el Paroi, vayoimru elov, koi amar Hashem Elokei oivrim, ad mosai me'anto le'onois miponai, shlach ami v'ya'avduni." So they say in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so said Hashem, the Elokei oivrim, ad mosai me'anto, until when will you refuse to be humbled before me? Let my people go. And if you refuse, hineni mevi mochar arbe bigvulecha. So there'll be the makeh of arbe, locusts. The v'chisa sein oretz. So you see that the way this Bo el Paroi was carried out is with telling Paroi that if he doesn't give in, there'll be a makeh of arbe. But it's strange because it didn't say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe to tell Paroi that there'll be a makeh arbe. All it said in the pasuk is Vayomer Hashem el Moshe Bo el Paroi. Come to Paroi. It doesn't say anything beyond that. So Rashi actually says on the pasuk Vayomer Hashem el Moshe Bo el Paroi, Zokt Rashi v'hasrei boy, and warn him. Rashi's actually saying that the pasuk was mekatzer. The pasuk gave us the short version, but really, when Hashem said to Moshe Bo el Paroi, he also told him to warn him about the upcoming makeh, which will be arbe. The Re'im and the Gur Aryeh say that, in spite of the fact that it says nothing in the pasuk, Rashi says so because you see that from the Hemshech HaKsuvim. It's mefurish that that's what they said to Paroi. Obviously, that's what Hashem told them to say to Paroi. However, in the Gur Aryeh, there's another pshat. The Gur Aryeh says, "V'yesh mefarshim." There are mefarshim that say, "Sheloi hoyot tzorich lahagid leMoshe lahasrois," that HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't have to spell it out to Moshe. He didn't have to tell him to warn Paroi. Shekvar yoda hamake koidem ha'asra, because he already knew. Moshe Rabbeinu knew on his own. Why? Since we see in the end of last week's Parsha that the wheat and the spelt were not harmed by the makeh of borod, by the hail, and as Rashi says in the end of Parshas Va'era, b'shem Rabboseinu ki afiloseinu. Pashtus, it means that they were late ripening, but Rashi says afilois is pilei plois nasu lahem. Wonders of wonders happened, that in spite of the fact that everything else was struck by the hail, the chita and the kusemes was not struck by the hail. It's afilois saying a pilei plois. Shari kol esev asode hiko haborot, and not the chita and the kusemes. Oz yoda Moshe. Say these mefarshim that then Moshe knew, he understood that what? Shaloi l'chinam hayanes, that the nest wasn't for no reason. Elo she'HaKadosh Baruch Hu chilei kamaka hazois l'shnei chalokim. Moshe Rabbeinu understood on his own that the Rebbeinu Shalom divided this makeh into two parts, into a part of borod and to a part of arbe. Kedei she'tavoy achareho makas ha'arbe lechalois hanishar min haborod, to destroy what was left over from the hail. And the Gur Aryeh says that that's why the pasuk continues over here and says leman tesaper, because the variety of makis will be a cause for tesaper ba'oznei bincha uven bincha. So this is a very interesting pshat, that the Rebbeinu Shalom did not tell Moshe Rabbeinu to warn Paroi about the upcoming Arba. Moshe Rabbeinu understood it on his own. The fact that Moshe Rabbeinu understood on his own that there will be a Makas Arba actually appears in the Ramban already, in the end of Parshas Va'era, because in the end of Parshas Va'era it says, "Vayomer Elov Moshe." Moshe Rabbeinu says to Paroi, "Kitzeisi es ha'ir, Efrois kapai el Hashem," that I'll daven to Hashem. Hakoylois yechdolun, v'haborod lo yeoid leman teidak el Hashem oretz. So this, I'll put an end to the Makkah of the hail. Then it says, "Va'ato va'avodecho yodati ki terem tiroun mipnei Hashem Elokim, va'apishto va'hasoira nukosa ki hasoira oviv va'apishto givoil." The flax and the barley were struck by the hail. However, v'hachito v'hakusemes loinuku ki afilo yiseino. The next pasuk says, "Vayetze Moshe mi'im Paroi esoir vayifreis kappa v'lashem vayechdelu hakolos v'aborod." So the emes is that the first pasuk over here and the last pasuk are connected. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Paroi, "As I will leave the city, I will daven to Hashem and hakolos yechdolun v'aborod lo yeoid leman teidak l'Hashem kol haaretz." And the last pasuk says, "Vayetze Moshe mi'im Paroi esoir vayifreis kappa v'lashem vayechdelu hakolos v'aborod." But in between, we have two psukim that don't seem to be connected. He says, "Va'ato va'avodecho yodati." I know that terem tiron mipnei Hashem Elokim. I know that you're not really fearful of Hashem. And then he talks about the Makas Bora that just happened. That va'apishto va'asoira nukoso ki asoira ovid va'apishto givoil va'achita va'kusemes loinuku ki afilo yiseino. What is this all about? How does this come in between the two psukim that are talking about davening for the end of the Makas Borod? Says the Ramban, "V'aldaiti shehem divrei Moshe al Paroi, she'omar lohem, yodati kiterem sur hamakos tiroon." I know that when the Makas are going on, you're afraid, but achakach tishnu bivaltechem, you'll go back to your old ways. Avol, I want you to know, says Moshe Rabbeinu to Paroi, hapishto v'hasoira nukosa, v'achita v'hakusemes shehem l'chol chiyuschem loinuku b'makazos. The hein biyad ha'elokim la'abed oisam mikemim toshuvu v'techtu l'fonav ramaz lohem. What it says in Parshas Bo, v'ochal es yeser ha'pleiton asheres lechem in Abora. So the Ramban says that these two psukim that Moshe Rabbeinu inserted over here in the end of Parshas Va'era are actually foretelling that there'll be another Makkah. The Makkah of Arba that will destroy what the Bara did not destroy. So the Ramban is already saying what these Yesh Mefarshim say, that Moshe Rabbeinu on his own figured out that since there was a miracle that held back the Bara from harming the Chita, the Hasaira, no, not the Chita and the Saira, but rather the Hakita Vakusemes. So he figured that there'll be another Makkah that will destroy also that. But no, the Ramban Taka says that Moshe Rabbeinu figured that out, but it's still a far cry from what these Yesh Mefarshim are saying, because these Yesh Mefarshim that the Gur Aryeh is bringing are mechadish that the Hasra, the warning that Moshe Rabbeinu gives to Paroi, was something that he figured out on his own. It wasn't that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him to warn Paroi that there'll be a Makas Arba. He figured it out on his own. And Moshe Rabbeinu actually says, Koi Omar Hashem. He says, so Hashem said that there'll be a Makkah of Arba. How could it say Koi Omar Hashem if the Rebbeinu Shalom didn't tell him to say it to Paroi and he's figuring it out on his own? There's a fascinating Chassam Sofer in the Chassam Sofer al HaTorah. He says like this, Lulei de Mistafina, if I wasn't afraid, and I guess he wasn't so afraid, Hava Amina, I would say, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Loi Omar le Moshe al Makas Arba, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not tell Moshe Rabbeinu that there will be a Makas Arba. Ma Yakes Paroi, with which Makkah? Hashem did not tell him with which Makkah he will hit Paroi. He did not tell him. Elonosan Rishus le Moshe Rabbeinu b'pam azois loy maloi masha yirtze. HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed Moshe Rabbeinu to pick and choose a Makkah on his own. V'HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yemale Ritzoin Avodav V'atzoso Yashlim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do as Moshe will say. L'man tesaper ato Moshe, in order that you, Moshe Rabbeinu, should be able to tell lebincho leben bincho ki yishlamti atzoscho, that I fulfilled your wish, your eitzah uritzoincho, ki, as it says in Iyov, vatigzar oimer vayokem loch, that tzaddik goyzav HaKadosh Baruch Hu mekayim. So this was a makkah that Moshe Rabbeinu decided on his own. So also it's brought in the Sefer Kol Simcha, in the name of the Rebbe Rebbunim Mipshischa, who says the same thing. Nirali shemakas arbe loy omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu leMoshe rak tzivo Hashem sheyivchar Moshe ba'atzmoi eza makas sheyirtze. And he says that the reason that it was this way was in order kedei sheyisroeh sheHashem yizborach oisa hakoil l'toivosam. And he says that's why it says netei yotcha al eretz Mitzrayim ba'arbe shelcho shebekoichacho she'ato emtzeisa. Moshe Rabbeinu invented the Makas Arba. So says the Rebbe Rebbeinu Mipshischa, and the same thing the Chasam Sofer says. The emesis is not just achronim, but it already appears. The idea already appears in the Rishonim, because in the Pirush Harosh al HaTorah, in the beginning of this week's Parsha, he asks the question that we don't find that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu to warn Paroi about a Makas Arba, and he says, "Vim toimar Moshe hey choyo yoidea." How did Moshe know HaKadosh Baruch Hu hoya osid lahavi aleiha Makas Arba? The Shloimar says the Rosh shehirgish v'hisboinen b'gzeira shava, that he made a gzeira shava. Tisaper yisaperu gabe yoel. In Sefer Yoel, there's a Makas Arba, as Rashi brings in this week's Parsha, and over there the Pasuk uses the word yisaperu, that they will tell the story of the Arba. And over here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, in the second Pasuk in this week's Parsha, Uleman tesaper. No, he made a gzeira shava. Gzeira shava, tesaper yisaperu gabe yoel, sheyesh Arba beferish. Over there it says mafurish Arba. V'chol nevuos hanevim nitonos leMoshe. So the question is, how's he making a gzeira shava from a pasuk that appears in Yoel, which is many generations after Moshe Rabbeinu? So says the Rosh, "V'chol nevuos hanavim nitonos leMoshe al peh ad boy kol navi v'navi," that all the future nevuos were already set to Moshe Rabbeinu al peh, until that navi will come and actually make it Torah shebechsav. Lochein nikru divrei Kabbalah. That's why the Divrei Hanavim are called Divrei Kabbalah. Because until the time of the Navi, it was just a Kabbalah Balpeh, and the Navi made it into Ksav. No, so the Pasuk already existed in Moshe Rabbeinu's mind. And Mamela, he was able to make a Gzeira Shava to Saper Yisaperu. The Rosh is very serious about this thing. So he asks, so we have a cloud that you don't learn Divrei Torah and Divrei Kabbalah. So he says, Lomda Moshe Rabbeinu came done. Moshe Rabbeinu has the ability to be dan Divrei Torah and Divrei Kabbalah. So that's what the Rosh says. So the Rosh says clearly that Moshe Rabbeinu was not told about this makkah, and he learned about this makkah with a Gzeira Shava. Similarly, it says in the Daz Zekanim Mibalei HaTosfos that there was no tzivui mefurish about the Makas Arba, and Moshe Rabbeinu figured it out on himself. But Tosfos doesn't say that he made a Gzeira Shava, but it says in the Balei HaTosfos, it says B'zeh Alosh Nireli Dehavin Moshe HaMakkah, that Moshe himself understood this makkah. Mida Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu LeMoshe Uleman Tesaper B'derech Hu Lesaper Al Makas Arba Sheharei Gam B'Makas Arba Deyoel Ksiv Lebneichem Saperu. So he's not making mamish Gzeira Shava, but he's saying nevertheless the same idea, that since it says Leman Tesaper, and we see in Sefer Yoel that the Makas Arba is the kind of thing that people talk about, and Memele he figured out that this is the makkah that's coming, and therefore he warned Paroi about a makkah of Arba. So it comes out that all Moshe Rabbeinu was told by the Rebbeinu Shalom was Boy El Paroi. Moshe Rabbeinu understood on his own that this coming to Paroi is not for nothing, but it's to warn him about an upcoming makkah. How did he know which makkah it is? So over here we have a few mahalchim. The Rosh and Tosfos say that it's Mikoyach the Psukim in Yoel. Either he's learning it with Gzeir Shaveh, either he's learning it from the Lashon of Tisaperu. According to the Yesh Mefarshim in the Gur Aryeh, he figured out on his own that what's left over from the hail will be knocked out by another makkah that will affect the Tzoymeach. And according to the Chassam Sofer and the Rebbe Rabbeinu Mipshischa, this makkah Moshe Rabbeinu himself was mechadish. In other words, he was given the option of choosing whatever makkah he wants by the Rebbeinu Shalom. So, but they all agree that in spite of the fact that this makkah HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't spell out, since Moshe Rabbeinu understood that that's what's going to be, or he was given the choice of choosing what's going to be, it's considered as if it was said to him afurish. To the extent that Moshe Rabbeinu says to Paroi, Koi Omar Hashem Elokei Oivrim, Ad Mosai Me Anto Leonois Miponai, etc. Hineni Shoileach Mochar Arbe Bigvulecha. So he understands that the boy is for a warning, and he understands that the warning is about Arbe, and he's Mechadish the Makkah, and the Mele it's included in the Vayoyim Hashem Al Moshe Boy El Paroi. And he could say about it, Koi Omar Hashem, which is really fascinating. But, even if this is all true, that Koi Omar Hashem can be said without it being spelled out, since Moshe Rabbeinu figured it out. But there's something that's added in this Hasroah that never appeared in the previous Hasrois. There's something that is added in the warning over here that never was said before. And this Avada, we need to understand how Moshe Rabbeinu understood to include this additional warning. What do I mean to say? In all the previous Asros, it says, Shlach Ami v'yavduni. Yeah, there's a demand. Send my people. And there's a threat that if you will not send them, or you will refuse to send them, then you will be punished with a makkah. But over here in the Hasro of Makkah's Arba, Moshe Rabbeinu adds, and he says, Ad Mosai me antole onois mi panei. Until when will you refuse to be humbled before me? Until when? This l'chora means that the upcoming makkah is not just because you're refusing now to free them, but this is something that's coming for the ad mosai, meaning for what you already did and for what you're doing now. It's for until when, meaning that this is an einish not only for holding the Jews back now from leaving Mitzrayim, but it's something that is an accumulative einish for the ongoing refusal. Now, if we say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't tell him to give the warning, and Moshe himself understood that the boy al Paroi is for the purpose of giving him a warning, like it was in the previous Makkahs. So it's Avad Shver. How did he know to add in this Hasra this new dimension of Ad Mosai Me Anto? There's another issue over here. In the Gur Aryeh, he brings in the name of the Yesh Mefarshim that the Nes, that Achito v'Hakusemes Lo Yinuku, was made in order to enable the Makas Arba. And as they say, Kidei laharbois b'minei hamakos, in order that there should be many Makas, shebazeh yisupar shmoi v'yacholtoi, through the fact that there'll be many Makas, so that it's as if the Makkah of the hail was held back in order that there'll be another Makkah, because by having another Makkah is Lamanta Saper. Now, is the Makkah's Arba for destroying the Chita and Soira the last type of Makkah that's left to do besides for the other 9? I mean, so we're saying that in order there should be 10 types of makas, we had to preserve the chita and the sa'ira b'derech neis, that it shouldn't be hit by the borod, in order that there should be able to be a makas arba. If the makas borod would destroy everything, there wouldn't be another makkah that can be given. I mean, what's the pshat that he figured out that there's a nace over here to break up this makkah in order that there should be a ribui makkahs? I mean, if the borod would have destroyed everything, the Rebbeinu Shalom could think of another makkah. I mean, what's the deal over here? So it could be that both these questions are answered in an oifon of chode mituretzes bechaverto, and the ikir of this I heard from my brother Reb Chaim Yisro, who said like this, based on the Brisker Rov. You know, the Brisker Rov in his Sefer al HaTorah explains the special taina of ad mosai me antolionis miponai that was neschadish in the hasro of the Makas Arba. And the Brisker Rov says, V'zeh b'chol ha'makos she'ad arba, in all the Makas until here, it just says shlach ami v'yavduni. V'hoche b'makas arba li toisef loshen zeh shel ad mosai me anto. V'nira habiur b'zeh al pi ma shekosav ha'Rambam reishil chistaniyos da al zeh gufe magia oynish al sheholchin bekeri ve'ein choizrim b'tshuva achar atzoris ayin shom b'dvor. In other words, that if somebody takes the tzoris that he's experiencing as keri, as casual, as not with a kavana, so for that itself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu adds tzoris to him. V'zeu she'omar Moshe leParoi, da'al zeh gufa atanenash. Achshov, al mi'uncho le'onois miponai, achrei kol ha'makes ha'ela, v'zeu ad mosei me'anto, shehisr boi al ha'chet hazeh atzmoi shel alicha bekeri. That here there's a hasra, not only on the refusal to free the Yidden, but there's also a hasra on the halicha bekeri, on the not taking the Rebbeinu Shalom's signs seriously. Well, so now if you look in the Rambam in the beginning of Hilchos Tainiyos, he says like this. This comes from the pasuk in Parshas Bo, v'halachtem imi bekeri, if you'll behave towards me with casualness, is v'halachti imochem b'chamas keri. With I will behave towards you with an anger, fury of keri. And the Rambam explains this pasuk by saying, Koloimar, k'sha'avi aleichem tzara k'dei shetashuvu. If I'll bring upon you a tzara in order that you should do tshuva, im toimru shehu mikre, if you'll say that it's a happenstance, oisif lochem chamas oisoi keri, I will add to you a chamas oisoi keri, more of the same. L'chora, why more of the same? If one needs to be punished for the additional chait of not taking the first oynish seriously, so this is an independent chait. The Rebbeinu Shalom could give him a different tzara. Why does he have to give him more of the same? More of the same type. The Rambam says clearly, Chamas oisoi keri, oisif aleichem chamas oisoi keri. So Mustama the Pshat is that this is an oynish because I'm not taking I'm not taking the sign. I didn't understand that what happened to me was for a reason, was for a purpose. The way HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends me the message, he resends the message by giving me more of the same. If you give me something else, I might think that something else is from the Rebbeinu Shalom, but what happened yesterday was something else. But if he gives me more of the same, I finally realize, oh, this is really a sign from heaven. That's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way he punishes for the v'halachtem imi bekeri is by adding chamas oisoi keri. Be'emes, it's mefurish like that in the Geras Tchis HaMesim of the Rambam. He writes, Hu yizborach yasmid b'charoin apoy, Hadavar ahu asher chashavtem oisoi mikri. that same thing that you thought was happenstance, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is more of that, until you will no longer be able to take it as a mikra, and you will realize that it's a punishment. So Mamela, we understand, according to the Briskerov, that that here there's a special taina on the Admosai Meyanto, there's a special taina on the Halicha Bekeri, so it had to be a hoisafa of Hamas Oisoi Keri, more of the same makkah. And that's how Moshe Rabbeinu understood from the Pilei Plois, that Loi Nuku, he understood that the next makkah will be a Makkah's Arbe, which will complete the destruction of the Pleito Hanisheres Min Haborod. And he also understood that the upcoming makkah will not just be a makkah for the refusal to free the Eden, but it will be a refusal, it will be a makkah that's coming for the Admosai Me'anta, the V'lachtamimi B'keri, and that's why it'll be more of the same. It will be more of the same. And in order for the next makkah to be able to be more of the same, it had to be that in the Makkah's Borod, some Tzomeach was spared in order that the next makkah should be able to be a second half of the same makkah. Now, in the Svasemis, in this week's Parsha, Tofresh Memtes, he says on the Pasuk, Boy al Paroi, L'man Shisi Oisoi Sayela Bekirboy L'man Tesaper. Now, this is he writes, it's very cryptic and very teeth, and obviously we don't really understand what he's saying, but I'll read it to you anyway. Golus Mitzrayim was a preparation for Kabbalas HaTorah. Just like we have in Torah Shebichsav and Torah Shebalpeh, Kein Hoya b'Mitzrayim. So also in Yetzias Mitzrayim, we have these two elements, these two dimensions. Oisoisai Eile, Oisoisai is like a letter. Hu bechinas Shebichsav. Heim ha'oisius v'ha'oris shesama Kodesh Baruch Hu bekirboy. Umizeh ha'koyach ha'yashalet al b'nei Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu led the Jewish people with the Oisoisai Eile that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put bekirboy. He gave him Torah. Uleman tesaper hu bechinas balpeh. Oisoisai Eile is Torah shebechsav, uleman tesaper is Torah shebalpeh. V'hainu ma she'isifu ha'mitzrim v'omrim hoven eschakmo, which because of ichbadati asliba kizelo umazeh. Just like we have a Torah shebechsav, and we have a koich to be moisiv, to understand the oimek HaTorah, ma she'enim mefurish. Yeah. So also, Zelo Mazeh, Paroi is against these two things. Now, Avada, this is Soid Hashem Li'Yireyav, we don't fully understand, but one thing we see, that in the Makkah's Arbe, where it says Laman Tesaper, there was a Gilui of Torah Shebal Peh, beyond the Oisios that were in the Oisos that happened until now, which is the Pchina of Torah Shebe Chsav. And this very much fits with what it says in the Rishonim, that the Iker Makas Arbe, Moshe Rabbeinu learned with Gzeira Shava, which is from the Yud Gimel Midas Shat Torah and Dreshes Bahem, which is Torah Shebal Peh. And according to the Yesh Mefarshim in the Gur Aryeh, Moshe Rabbeinu figured it out on his own. According to some Sefer and the Rebbe Rabbeinu Mipshitze, Moshe Rabbeinu was Mechadish this Makkah on his own, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was masking. All this is Shayach to the Gilui of Torah Shebal Peh. Even according to Rashi, I mean, I don't want Rashi to be out of this. Even according to Rashi, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did tell him to be masre on this makkah, but it nevertheless is not spelled out in the pasuk. So it's also Torah Shebal Peh that's revealing to us that it was there, it was said. Now you know that Chazal tell us that each makkah was meshamesh a chodesh. In Shmois Rabbah, there's a machlokes. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia, one of them says that 24 days Moshe Rabbeinu gave the warning, and 7 days the makkah took place. And the other Mandamer says that for 7 days he gave the warning, and for 24 days the makkah went on. Now, since Makkah's Bechoros we know was in Nisan, so Makkah's Choshech, that was the makkah before, was in Chodesh Adar. Makkah's Arbe was in Chodesh Shvat. And so It says Mefurish in the Eliyahu Rabbah in Siman Tov Reish Tzadi Gimel in the name of the Sefer Amar Ko that the Makis Arba was in Chodesh Shvat. Now you know that in Parshas Devarim it says Ba'ashtei Osor Chodesh Be'echad LaChodesh, in the 11th month, on the first day of the month, Hoyel Moshe Be'eres HaTorah Azoy Sleimer. Moshe Rabbeinu explained the Torah. And as the Rambam writes in the Hagdamah to Pirush HaMishnayos, Kasher Igia Soifar Boim Shona, in the end of the 40 years, B'Rosh Chodesh Shvat, on Rosh Chodesh Shvat, Hikilon Olav HaSholom, Moshe Rabbeinu gathered the Jews. V'amar lahem, Hein Korvu Yomai Lamus, I'm about to die. V'chein Misha Shoma Mimeni Eze Kabbalah. It's not talking about the written Torah. It's talking about the oral Torah. Misha Shoma Mimeni Eze Kabbalah V'shochecha Yovoi V'nevareren Oloi. I'll be mevaretim. Umisha Nistapko Loi Eze She'elo Yovoi V'nevareren Oloi. Amar HaKosav Hoyel Moshe Be'er Es HaTorah Hazoi Sleimer, etc. Ubiraru mipiva Kabbalah v'lomdu hapirushim kol oisrei azman shemerish Chodesh Shvat at Shvi B'Adar. So you see that Chodesh Shvat, which was the month of the Makis Arba, was the month of Gilui Torah Shebal Peh. The Hoyel Moshe Be'er Es HaTorah Hazoi Sleimer was in the month of Shvat. The Ramban over there says on the pasuk Hoyel Moshe, he says V'tam Hoyel Moshe, he willed to do so. Sherotzo levar lahem HaTorah v'hiske came lohidia. So the whole Hoyel Moshe Be'er Es HaTorah Azois that took place in Chodesh Shvat was that Moshe Rabbeinu on his own decided to do so without being told by the Rebbeinu Shalom. You know, in the Shilos Teshuvos Eretz Tzvi of from the Kozlakova Rav, he brings that he heard from his Rebbe, the Avnei Nezer, that every year in Chodesh Shvat, the lashon is margish shinui v'toisefes b'chidush Torah shaloi. He's margish a change and a toisefes in his chidush Torah. The Kozlakova explains that this is connected with Rosh Hashanah Le'ilonis, because the Iker Paris are Torah Shebal Peh, but according to what we're saying, it could be that it's because Chodesh Shvat is the Chodesh of Makis Arba, and it's the Chodesh of Hoyel Moshe Be'er HaTorah Hazoi Sleimer. So it's not B'davke Tu B'Shvat. It's the whole month, which is a month of Torah Shebal Peh. Now, according to the Kadmonim, the Eser Makis were parallel the Asorim Amoris, Shebahem Nivra Hoyla, meaning that the world was created with Asorim Amoris, but those Ma'amoris actually are concealed. We usually don't experience the divine presence in nature. So the Makis actually peeled off the Hester from the Maimer and revealed the divine doing behind the Ma'amoris. The Maharal in the Sefer Gvuras Hashem Perek Nun Zayin has a whole arichis in explaining which Makkah parallels which Ma'amor, and he says it's Milamato Lamaila. In other words, Makkah's Bechoris, which is the 10th, is connected to the Maimer, the first Maimer, which is Bereshis Nami Maimerhu, as the Gemara says, and so on. So he says with regards to the Makkah of Arbe, he says, Arbe Keneged Tache Ha'oretz, Eitz Pri Oise Pri. Ki Ha'arbe Hazeh, Hu Hashchose B'Maimer Hazeh Davke. The Arbe destroys the Tache Ha'oretz and the Eitz Oise Pri. Ki Ha'arbe Yoise Meyuchet Shu Mashches HaPri. K'diksiv Zera Rav Toitzi Asode U'ma'at Tesev Ki Chaslenu Ha'arbe. Aval Pi Shegam HaBorod Hoya Make Kol Eitz Asode. Aval Ha'arbe Lo Hoya Meyuchet Ki Im La'etz V'La'Pri. And he says that the Makas Borod parallels the Maimer of Yehirokia. So now I just want to say that just like on the third day of Maaseh Bereshis, the Maimer of Tachi Oretz was said, the Maimer of Tachi Oretz was said, and so on that day, the Maimer of Yehirokia of the second day reaches Miluoi Vituvoi, as Rashi says. And that's why on the third day, it's Huchbal Boy Ki Toiv. So also the Makis Arbe that comes to reveal the Maimer of Tache Oretz comes as an addition and as a completion of the Makas Borod. Just like the Maimer of Tache Oretz completes the Chalukah of the Maim El Yoinim and Maim Tachtoinim in Yehirakia, which was on the Yom HaSheni, so also the Makas Arbe completes the Makas Borod, which parallels the Yehirakia. Now you know that in the Maimer of Tache Oretz, it says Leminoi only by the Eitz Oisa Pri. But nevertheless, the way things happened, it says Vatoitze Ha'oretz Deshe Esev Mazria Zera Lemineu. Also the Deshe Esev that wasn't told to come out Lemineu came out Lemineu. The Gemara says in Chulun Daf Samach that how did the Shoim know to do so? Because Nasu the Shoim Kal V'choyme Ba'atzmon. They made a Kal V'choyme. In Retzoino Shal Kodesh Baruch Hu Be'irvuvya, if he wants things to be messed up, I mean, yes, Soloma Omar Lemineu Be'ilonis. Why did he say by the Ilonis that each tree should come out in its own way? Let's say it's Be'irvuvya Omar Kodesh Baruch Hu Lemineu Onu Alachas Kam V'cham. So you see that this Maimer of Tache Oretz, the way it played out, L'chatchila, was Mikoyach the Midah of Kal V'chomer, of Teresh Shebal Peh. Nasu the Shoim Kal V'chomer Ba'atzmam. So also in the Makas Arbe, which comes to reveal the Maimer of Tache Ha'oretz in this world, Moshe Rabbeinu comes to this Makkah through a Kal V'chomer or through other drachim of Teresh Shebal Peh. There's also the Mekubalim say that the Esa Makkos are mechuvin keneged the Esa Sfiros. So that Makkos Bechoros is keneged the sphere of Keser, the Makkah of Choshech is keneged the sphere of Chochmah, and the Makkos Arbe is keneged the sphere of Bina. And Bina is Mevin Dover Mitoich Dover. Therefore, it makes a lot of sense that the Makkos Arbe that's keneged Bina should come through the Mevin Dover Mitoich Dover of Moshe Rabbeinu.